Yeah.
So, Jahan, please, sir, I will make you as a co-host. Okay. Jahan, are you there? Jahan? Gayatri, please check.
So, Pratibha, actually, I will start it because at 1 o'clock I have some different
Yeah,
meeting.
sir. Sure,
So
sure.
possibly introduction. Okay, that's all right. I will start.
Yeah.
So you want me to start?
Yes, sir. Sure.
Okay. So share my screen. I will share my screen.
Yes, sir.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, all. Hope my voice is clear and my screen is also visible. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Is visible? My
Yeah.
audio is also good. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So let me start. Okay. Good
Yes.
afternoon, all. Symbiosis Skill and Professionality Startup Incubation Center. Today we are conducting this webinar on funding fundamentals for startups. So as you all know, startup ecosystem is growing day by day, and entrepreneurs and startups community is on the rise. So we should know this funding as an important part of this startup ecosystem. So we should know something about funding and the fundamentals of funding. So that's the reason I am giving this webinar. So unfortunately, I would like to give it offline, but at this point of time, this is opportunity for online. So we will continue like that. So in between, if you have any questions, any problem, raise your hand or let me know. So with a small time constraint, we'll start it. Uh, okay. So let me introduce myself about. My name is Uday Deo, and I'm engineer by academic with industrial experience of 25 plus years. I have a strong belief in entrepreneurship mindset of India and currently working on my knowledge and experience to boost the same my capacity for the PCSIC, which is the Pimpri Chinchwad Startup Incubation Center. This is a business incubation center at Chinchwad, and this is a joint venture of PCMC Smart City and Auto Cluster, supported by Maratha Chamber of Commerce. So I am handling this PCSIC incubation center, and I'm in touch with startups and entrepreneurs day by day, every day, and from this whole experience from them, I have made this presentation for you. So whatever I understand about funding, I'll share with you today. So with this quick introduction about myself, we'll move on to next one. Let's we'll first see why startup or entrepreneurs require funding, because it can be a various reason, but the common reasons what I observed during last couple of years is they require funding to develop the prototype of their idea into product or service. So normally startup or entrepreneurs have some idea in their mind and they wanted to convert that idea into a prototype product or service. So for that they require funding. Sometimes they have some unique idea, so they have to apply for the intellectual property, copyright. So they need funds for that. Uh, to pay for the resources required in the initial phase of product development, because you as a startup or founder of the startup, you will work freely, but the other resources what you employ for your as a team member, you have to pay them. So that's a funding required for that to reach the potential consumers of the product, because as your product is new, possibly you need to market your product more, you need to contact people, your potential customers in the initial phase on a higher scale, so you require funding for that. And lastly, the main reason is you have a small funding with your bootstrap, you have started your own business, started a small startup, and with the success of your prototype, you now need to scale up your business, and for scaling up you need funding. So these are the common reasons where you require funding, and there can be more reasons also apart from this, but these are the common reasons normally uh, a startup or entrepreneurs require funding. Now next one, Now we will see which are the main three ways of funding. There are main three ways of funding: grant, equity, and debt. So these are the main three ways by which any entrepreneur or startup can raise fund in India. First is grant. As you know, grant, this is the kind of monetary support given by CSR activity or government to startups. And this grant, as you know, it's a donation kind of thing. So you don't have to return back to the donor, but you have to submit the usage report of this grant on a regular basis. That depends on the donor's wish. Some donors may ask you to submit a usage report on month by month basis. Some may ask you on a quarterly basis or yearly basis. So depend on that. But so the purpose of this usage report is whatever donations or grant you received from the donor, they want to check that it is going to the correct purpose. So this is the main thing in the grant. So you have to give the usage report, but you don't have to pay back the amount given to you. So that's the good thing about grant. But there are some legal compliances you need to do for raising grant. So this is the one first basic way the startup raise their funds. And this is very initial stage they raise the fund through this grant. Like grants are normally given by colleges, institutes, universities to their students to encourage the entrepreneurship mindset. Second is equity, which is very regular and famous one, where in this startup gets the fund from the investors, and in exchange of that fund, they have to share some equity with the uh, investor. So that can be based on your startup valuation. The investor will do the valuation of your startup, and based on your valuation, they will give you the investment and they will ask for the equity. I think most of you have seen the Shark Tank, which was regular on a TV, and through this Shark Tank, you must have seen the equity part of this funding. So they say we will shell out 20 lakh rupees for 20% equity, and then the other person says no, no, we are looking for only shelling out 10% equity. It's like so, it's a negotiation happening on that share of equity. So this equity, what normally is shared in the startup phase, is called as preferential share allotment. So what we saw see on the stock market, they are the regular or ordinary shares, and these are the preferential shares. So nowadays there are some funding ISEF notes, which are called as India Simple Agreement for Future Equity. So there is a 100x VC, a venture capital firm, which has introduced this as a copyright product, which is ISEF. So this is ISEF is a compulsory convertible preferential share. What happens like when the funding is given to you, these ISEF notes are given to you, and based on the agreement contract in the ISEF notes, the investor will get the equity of your startup in the future date. So that period is also negotiated in that contract, sometimes 3 years, 5 years down the line. So these ISEF notes are very popular instrument nowadays between for the investors to invest in a startup or entrepreneurs on an equity basis. So and this is equity is the most popular way. So in equity, what happens that that investor will be a part of your startup. So you share the equity to them, and out of profit, if you make down the line, you need to share that profit also with them as in the form of dividend. But as you know, in equity, when investor invests in equity, he is of course looking for dividend, but he is always looking for the growth of his uh, investment. So we'll cover that part later during the presentation. So just understand that equity is a major part of type of investment raising instrument for startups. So the third one is debt. As you everyone knows that debt, like we go to a bank, take a loan. So that is the kind of debt. So startups also can go to the bank or non-banking financial institute and raise the funding through debt, which has a fixed or floating interest rate. So in this case, we have to startup has to return the investment, the debt amount to the bank on, and as well as they have to pay the interest on that. So this is a very general kind of instrument for raising funds. Um, and the question is, which one is better? If that is the question, then it depends on the condition or position of startup. So Sometimes equity is better for startup, sometimes debt is better for startup. So it depends on the situation of startup, financial condition. Nowadays, there in India, we are also looking for a crowdfunding as option to raise funds, because earlier this option was not available. But nowadays, we have crowdfunding platforms where uh, you can raise funds through crowdfunding. A few of my startups in my incubation center have done this, and they have got a decent funding through crowdfunding. So what happens in crowdfunding, that there's a crowdfunding platform, and on that platform you have to make a um, marketing campaign about your startup, that what your startup is doing and why you're doing, like you have to clear your why about your startup. For example, a startup working in electric vehicle field will say that I am doing this startup to reduce the pollution or environmental pollution, and that's why I'm doing this electric vehicle startups. And so you have to clear your why to the crowd, and once they are satisfied with your why and they say, yeah, I need to support this startup, so they can fund you through this crowdfunding platform and you can raise the fund. So mainly this crowdfunding platform also has a donation based funding. So there is no, you don't have to return it back. And the amount involved is very small. Like every donor may be donating 1,000 rupees, 4,000 rupees, like that. So with this crowd, the whole investment um, amount will be huge, because everybody contribute 1,000 rupees, and if there is a 100 donors, then you can see that the investment amount will be more. So this is a very new for kind of crowdfunding platform India is facing, and nowadays it's becoming popular. So just be aware, on internet you can see a lot of examples and platforms of crowdfunding. So these are the main three ways, as I mentioned. Next one, now we'll see the term with angel investors. When we go for any funding, we always hear this term angel investors. So who is angel investors? So an angel investor is an individual who provides capital for a business or business startups, usually in exchange of convertible debt or ownership equity. So these are also kind of investors, but why they are called angel investors? Because normally angel investors invest in startup when the other investors don't invest, because they are the most they invest in startup at the more riskier phase. So that's why they are like an angel to that startup. As you know, angels are mm, helping the um, helping you. So they are the angel investors. So they are investment is also called as seed funding. The investment raised through angel investors are called as seed funding, because they are putting their money as a seed to grow your business. So these are angel investors are generally at the initial phase for any startup or entrepreneurs in their initial journey. These angel investors help them. So these can be an individual who are interested in your startup, and they invest. So I will just list down some angel investors also down the line in the presentation. Next is venture capital. The other part, like once the angel investors invest in startup and your startup grows, possibly when you require more funding, this venture capital comes into picture. So basically, venture capital is nothing but is a professional company organizations who invest in startup or entrepreneurs in the early stages in the emerging companies, and that have been deemed to have high growth potential. Because see, whenever any investor invests in startup, he is always looking for growth of his investment, 2x time, 3x time, 5x time. So he's not interested in dividend. So dividend is okay, one part of it, but he's more interested in the multiple growth of his investment. So venture capitals are the those investors, a group of investors who has formed a company, and the purpose of the company is to invest in emerging businesses, startups, entrepreneurs, so that their investment will grow multifold. So if you see, venture capital comes at a later stage in startup journey. Funding process normally start with bootstrap. So the if we divide the funding, we have covered that in the next slide. But if we divide the whole funding process, there are three categories. One is bootstrap, which is a self-funding. So when the startup start its company, uh, our always advice to our startup is you try to bootstrap your startup. That is self-fund or funding from your mom and dad. That's called the bootstrap. Then the angel investor comes into the picture, which we just saw. It is called as seed funding. And after that, there is a venture capital, which is called as post-seed funding, or this is a later stage of the angel investor. Peak for any funding round will be initial public offer, which is IPO. You must have heard in the market that a lot of IPOs are listed, like Zomato, Paytm, Nika. So these are the initial public offers. All these were startup before, and once after raising all these funding rounds, the final round will be IPO, which is making your company from private limited to public limited company. So you will be asking public to be a part of your company. So that's the ultimate aim of any uh, startup or entrepreneur, that he should raise his company to that level where he can float the IP of his company. And that's the main thing the investors in your organization also looking for, because at this IPO level they will get a good valuation for their uh, investment. Generally, angel investors are individuals, while venture capital funds are companies or group of companies funding startups. So that's the main difference between angel investors and venture capital. So I think this is a monologue happening because I just want to know that till that whatever I have covered, everything you could hear and you understood. So anybody can just let me know if you have understood this, whatever we have covered till now, or shall I proceed further?
Dear students, you can just text mark in the chat, please.
All good? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I'll proceed further. So this is till now what we have covered. I will just recap once again. We have seen why funding is required for startup. Then we have seen the three basic types of funding, which is grant, equity, and this one, the last one is crowdfunding also, which is a new form of it, and debt. So these are the basic kinds of funding. Then we have seen what is angel investors and what is venture capital. So till now we have covered this much. Now we'll move further with this. As I mentioned to you that there are some top angel investors in India, which I listed over here. Mr. Kunal Shah of Trade, Binny Bansal of Flipkart, ex-Flipkart, we can say. He's no more with Flipkart now. Anupam Mittal of Shark.com, he's a Shark Tank investor. Ratan Tata, need no introduction, Sir Ratan Tata. So these are the top angel investors in India. So as I mentioned you, angel investors are nothing but they invest in a startup or entrepreneurs on a personal capacity. So whatever they have earned their own wealth or money, they invest in startups. So we are called angel for the startup. So angel investors. Some VCs in India, venture capitalists in India are Sequela Capital, Nexus Ventures, Matrix Partners, and 100x VC. This is the one which I mentioned to you in ISEF notes. They have this ISEF notes as their um, intellectual intellectual property product that they have invented that ISEF notes for India. So they're becoming more popular. So just for your information, I just note it down. There are so many angel investors, but these are the top one which I know. Now we'll see when you go for investment, you should know what investor looks into your startup while funding. Because if you are going for exam, you know what you should know what are the type of questions they will be asking and what are the syllables. So you prepare for that. So on the same basis, when you are going in front of any investors, you should know what are the investors looking for in your startup, so that you can prepare yourself in that direction and can give a good presentation of your pitch to them. So first is your idea, which is we should be innovative and uh, trying to solve the problem faced by society. So they are looking for the product market fit, or if you are offering service, then service market fit. So whatever service or product you are offering, it should be satisfying the problem faced by society. So I always tell to my startups also over here in PCSIC that if you are saving somebody's time and efforts, your product or service will be successful down the line. So it's just a important thing a startup or innovative entrepreneur should keep in mind, that your idea or your startup, what your product or solution you're offering should be um, having a good product market fit. So this is the one thing they are looking for. Second is your execution capacity, because only idea will not help you. Because if you have a good idea in your mind, and that idea is also solving a problem of the society, but unless that idea is executed and it is implemented idea into a product or service form in the society, uh, this will not help you. So they are always looking for the execution capacity. So in this includes the capacity of the you as a founder. They're also looking for your team composition and their expertise. So once you have that good team composition, you as a founder has good experience in that field, then investors are more comfortable to invest in your startup. So this is the second point they you should note it down. So whenever you present the pitch in front of investor, you should clear these points. Third is product market fit. Just we discussed about that. That your product, what you're offering, or service, what you're offering, should be satisfying the demand of your potential market or your society. Scalability of your startup. So startup, when you start any startup or a business, it is a small form, or it's a small level. But once you make a prototype, once you test your or validate your prototype in the market, then you should be able to scale that business. Because once you when you scale your business, then only the more revenue will be generated, and then only you can generate the more profit. So always investors, as I mentioned to you, is looking to invest in your startup or enterprise only because he want to grow his investment. So he can grow his investment only when you scale your business. So he always looks for the scalability of your startup idea. And last one is opportunity to get exit. As I mentioned to you, any investors invest in your startup to get in, grow his investment. So how can he grow his investment? Only when he can take exit from your startup. For example, he invested 10 lakh rupees in your startup, and your startup grows, and your valuation of your startup grow from 1 crore to 10 crores. Then his investment also grow, like 10 lakh what he invested. When a new investor will come later stage, he will exit your startup, and he will get a good growth of his invested amount. So he's looking for that. So down the line, 3 to 5 years, you should have a vision in your pitch, that what is the vision for the investor to get an exit from your startup. Because no investor comes to you only to stay with you. He wants to grow his capital or his investment. So he's always looking for the exit strategy while investing. So in your pitch, you should have mentioned the exit strategy for investor down the line 3 to 5 years. And this is just estimate. So at that point of time, you will not have a crystal ball in your hand saying exactly after 3 years you will have so much valuation of my startup, but you have to give them the guidance. So these are the few points you must what investor looks into your startup while funding. So you should cover these points while making a pitch for your investor. So your pitch will be effective, and there are more probability that investor will look into your startup for investment. Move on to next point. Like funding has the following stages. As I covered this earlier, funding what we raise has pre-seed funding, seed funding, and venture capital, which is called as post-seed funding. Also, you can see. So, as I mentioned, pre-seed funding includes a bootstrap, where your startup invests in his own earn money, or with family or friends, or for mom and dad in a startup. Because in the initial phase, only you believe in your business idea, so no one else will be investing it. So you have to invest on your own fund. So that's called as seed funding or bootstrap. Then the next thing is seed funding, where the angel investor comes into picture. Here, the first time startup is exposed to an external investor who is interested to invest in your business. And as I mentioned you, that's called a seed funding, because angel investors will give you his money as a seed on which you can grow his money. So it's called a seed funding. So this is the second stage of any funding round. So step by step, if we say you should bootstrap your startup, you should uh, execute your idea into a small prototype, or to validate your product or service. And then you should go to angel investor saying, this is my prototype of my product or service, and now I want to scale up. So I need a funding from you. So then angel investor will be investing in you in the seed funding round. And once that stage is over, your startup is settled now, is stable now, you are looking for scaling up your business. So the venture capital comes into picture. Normally, venture capital invests in your startup through accelerator also, because in startup ecosystem there are three main phases. One is pre-incubation, second is incubation, and third is accelerator. So we as a PCSIC, we are at the incubation stage where we help our startup in the initial phase of the business. I will discuss that at the end of this presentation. And the accelerator is the phase where startups are settled down, they are standing on their legs, and then now they want to fly. So while flying, venture capital help them with the funding, and that happens through accelerator. So as you must be reading the newspaper, you see the Series A funding, Series B funding, Series C funding. So it's nothing but as the funding alphabet increases, the your valuation, your startup investment also increases. So typically, Series A round startup valuation is between 2 million US dollar to 15 million US dollars. Series B round is from 20 million to 60 million, and Series C is above 60 million. So this is just thumb rule. So there can be Series D round, Series nowadays you can see that somebody has raised Series D funding also. So, but these are the main ABC are the series rounds for startup funding through venture capital. So generally, the IPO is the next stage after this venture capital funding rounds. And generally, when a startup is raising a Series C round funding, investors are more interested in invest in startup, because normally after C round of funding, the next stage will be IPO. So in IPO, there is a good valuation depending on the market condition, startup will get, and that's why the investors will have good return on their investment. So normally, when a startup is raising a Series C funding, then more and more big investors are looking into the startup for investment, because normally after Series C round, the next round will be IPO. So if initial public offer to discuss. Okay, so this is about funding. So any, I don't know, any questions till now from anyone? I'm happy to answer that based on what we covered. Or otherwise, I will proceed further. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Sir, you can
Yeah.
proceed.
Continue. No problem.
Yes.
Okay. So with this brief introduction about funding, then venture capital, angel IPO, and various instruments of funding, and we just stages of the funding rounds. We just now see the government schemes for startup raise. These are the popular government schemes normally available to startup for funding. This is Startup India Seed Fund, Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, Atal Innovation Mission. These are the three basic schemes offered by government for startup or entrepreneurs, which are open to all sectors. So it is not a sector specific scheme, but there are some sector specific schemes also from government. Like for example, if the health tech startup is there, then there is a particular scheme for health tech startup. Then if there is a renewable energy startup, then there is a separate scheme for renewable. So all these schemes pertaining to sectors are also available, but these are the main three schemes normally government is offering, for, which is open to all sectors. And these all details of these schemes are available on the Startup India uh, website, so which I listed on the presentation. And I will be sharing this presentation with um, Symbiosis coordination team. So if you want to refer that later on, so just remember these are the three schemes for only government is promoting at the moment, so that startups can get raise funds. As I mentioned to you, in funding, there's a concept to understand called a term sheet. So whenever you pitch to invest, see, as a startup, you go to investor, you pitch in front of investors with your pitching, and once he is satisfied with your startup, um, then want to invest in your startup. Then there is a one something called as term sheet. So term sheet is in simple language nothing but a black and white documentation on the investment deal happening between you as a business and investor. So term sheet normally specifies what is the equity amount you are sharing with your investor, what is the amount of interest with any special terms and conditions, clauses about exit for both investor and your business. As I mentioned, that investors are looking for exit. So what is the clauses for that? And roles and responsibilities with the parties of for the investment deal. So these are the small final points that mentioned the term sheet. So more details about the term sheet is available on this link which I mentioned there, 100x VC. So you can go there and just find out more information on that, because term sheet is nothing but a black and white document. You need to have a signed document by investor as well as you as a founder. And it's like when you go to a bank for a loan, there's a contract they sign, uh, that what are the terms of your loan. So similarly for investment, this term sheet will specify what are the terms of the this investment between investor and you as a startup founder. So this is a link which you can always go and find out more. There is a one scheme from 100x VC which is called first check. Basically, as a startup, they have an online portal where you can submit your startup information or pitch of your startup, and that information will be scrutinized by the 100x VC team. And if they are satisfied with that information, they will call you back, and then there will be more discussion happening. And I think they will, at the end of the round, they will sign your first check about your of the investment. So that can range to 25 lakh to 50 lakhs. So this is a first check scheme of 100x VC. So those who are interested, you can go to this link which I have given, and find out more about the first check scheme. So other VCs also have similar schemes, but this is one I just wanted to bring to your notice. So, and after all, as we all seen that we have what we have discussed so far is why funding is required, what are the instruments of funding, then what are the angel investors, venture capitals, then what are the government schemes, what investor looks into your startup while funding. So these are the all things we discuss. So this is just summary of what we already discussed, that as we have seen all about funding details, one must remember that any investors are investing in your startup for to grow his money in a multiple level. So, as a startup, when you pitch to any investors, you should always give him the motivation that you are looking for more funding rounds down the line, so that he can get exit opportunity at that time, and you are looking to improve your valuation of your startup. For example, investor invests in your startup. At that time, your startup valuation was 10 lakh rupees, and invested 2 lakh rupees for 20% equity. Then down the line, after 3 to 5 years, when your startup grows and your startup valuation becomes 1 crore rupees, then his investment, which was 2 lakh rupees, has grown to 20 lakh rupees. So this multiple investment growth of the investment investor always looking for. So whenever you pitch or uh, go to any investors, you should always give this motivation to your investor that these are the exit opportunities available with my startup down the line. As you know, in stock market also, any they are also called investors. So they invest in stock market shares, public listed companies. But that shares are called as ordinary shares. But there also the investor invests to grow their money or they grow their investment. So similarly, in this investment also, startup investment also, the concept is same. Any investors is with you, invested in your startup because to grow his money. So the and this is a preferential share normally what you offer at the startup age. And there also you have to pay share the profit with your investors in the form of dividend. So dividend is one part of it. It is the cherry on your top of your ice cream. But he is looking to grow his investment. That's the main motto of an investor. So always you remember this thing, that investors are investing in your startup or your enterprise because he wants to grow his money. So if you are giving a dividend of 10%, 20%, now he is not interested in that only. He's looking for investment growth. So as a startup, what's your responsibility? In the initial phase of development of your idea into reality, you should bootstrap. So as PTS PCS says, we have 40 startups with us. So always tell them that try to bootstrap your startup as much as possible, depending on your capacity. Everybody's financial capacity is different. So uh, in your capacity, whatever you can do, you should develop a small prototype or a sample of your product or service, which you can show it to investor so that they are more confident to invest in your startup. So initial phase, you should bootstrap, and then once your product or service is validated in the market, then you should go to investor and pitch your idea to them, start up to them, and then this will give confidence to your investor to invest in you. And there's a high chance that you will crack a good deal. Because if you go to investor in the initial journey, when you don't have any product or service which is tangible, then he will not be any comfortable position to invest in you. So, and though if some risky investor invests also, then they will ask you for more equity. For example, investor uh, for 10 lakh valuation, if he is giving 2 lakh rupees to you, then he may say that, oh, I need for 2 lakh rupees, I need 40% of the equity. So necessarily you will lose more equity. So in the initial phase, you always should bootstrap, and then you go to an angel round, which is a pre-seed funding round, seed funding round, and then VCs, and then IPO. So that should be a journey for any startup. So we are like through PCSIC, we are connected with a lot of investors, and one of the investors given a good suggestion to a startup, which I have just may want to share with you all. As a startup, you should focus on adding value to your product or services, because as a startup, your prime role when initial journey, you should be focusing on your adding value to your product or service, whatever you're doing, and the valuation of your startup will follow. Because normally what happens, the startup looking for raising funds and everything, so their focus, because normally startups are run by founders and co-founders in the initial journey, so their focus goes to the investment and this funding thing, then their focus on their main core product or service is generally diluted. So then that is no good idea. So in the initial phase, bootstrap your startup, focus on your product or service, get it developed in such a way that it will add value to your potential customers. And then once you do that, I think valuation will follow, because this is an open market. Uh, if you Social media is so active, so people will know about your startup, about your idea, your product service, and because of the value in your product or service, they will definitely come to you and ask that, oh, I want to invest in your startup. So that's a very good scenario for any startup. So as a startup, you should always focus on your product and service, and evaluation of your startup will follow after that. So that's a um, main advice given by one of angel investors of in Pune to our startups, which I wanted to share with you. So with this, I just want to conclude with my presentation, because I have whatever I know in the funding space, I have presented in front of you. I will share this presentation also with your coordination team, so you can go through these links which I shared earlier. And before ending this presentation, I just want to know, I just list down my details also here. My name is Uday. My contact numbers are there on the screen. My email address is also there. So feel free to contact me. We are a business incubation center called Pimpri Chinchwad Startup Incubation Center, PCSIC. So this is, as I mentioned, this is a joint venture of PCMC Smart City and Auto Cluster, supported by Maratha Chamber of Commerce. So we help startup in the initial phase of their journey in the four verticals. We offer them the office space over here, so they can come and use this as office, because in the initial phase you need some space to sit for your business. So we give that. We give them the business mentor support. We have good mentors on our board, and they offer one-to-one mentoring. So whatever business difficulties you face, you can talk to them as a big brother with our mentors. We give them the networking opportunities through various online, offline events, because any business grows with network. So network is the key. So we offer the networking opportunity to all our business incubates. And lastly, uh, business founders can come and get the business knowledge upgrade. So we give them the business knowledge upgrade opportunities through various uh, online webinars, or we conduct some startup fundas every first and third Friday. We have some capsule courses. So all this support, what we have mentioned, is free of cost. We don't charge anything to startup or enterprise, because we know that in initial phase, money is a problem. So we offer them free. It's a government initiative. So feel free to call me or connect with me for your incubation needs. So since you are attending this webinar, that means you have an enterprise entrepreneurship mindset. So I think down the line you'll be starting your startup soon. So please feel free to call me, and I will be sharing this presentation with the coordination team. So with this, I thank you all for listening to my uh, short webinar. And if you have any questions or doubt, please feel free to connect with me. Any questions so far? I think my
Himanshu,
chat box.
just type your message in the chat window, please. Anybody having any
Yeah,
question?
I'm free, and not right now. I have given my details also, so feel free
Yes,
to call me.
sure.
So thank you all again from on behalf of PCSIC for listening to my webinar, and that's it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think you can connect to Uday sir, Honorable Uday sir, and you may have delighted with this particular presentation, may have taken advantage. So on behalf of Symbiosis Skills and Professional University, I, Pratibha Patil, would like to express my sincere gratitude to Honorable Uday Deo sir, who has spared his time and the precious time in attending enlightening this particular session and spending valuable time with us. And definitely, we would like to invite you in the campus very soon, sir, so
I
that
would
our
love.
students will definitely will be interested to visit, like to meet you in person. So today's webinar under the Institute's Innovation Council, we have organized this on the topic angel investment VC funding opportunities for startup. So we are very much delighted for you, Uday sir,
Thank you.
for this webinar. Thanks a lot, sir, for
Yeah,
sparing
looking
valuable time.
forward, looking
Yes,
forward for physical interaction also, because
yeah,
online there are some limitations. So,
yes,
but I
yes.
try to cover as much
And
as I can.
basically, I am very much feeling guilt in my mind because due to first we could not start our session on time, but
That's
I
all right.
think definitely we will try to overcome that. And the
Yeah,
students who participated may
yeah.
have taken this good experience of
I hope that.
yeah,
Yeah, I hope
hearing
that
you
with this
and sharing.
webinar, a few of your entrepreneur students can start their startups. I will be happy. Okay. Thank
Definitely,
you.
yeah.
Bye bye.
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jayan sir. Bye-bye.
So I declare this webinar is over. Thank you everybody for joining this session.